unless I'm doing it wrong, but I'm pretty sure we're live. How are you? It's Carl Gatrinig, my co-host for today. I'm asking you,
Perfect.
you hear me? Okay, good.
Yeah. Everything's working. Great.
So last week we finished up our abundance tuning shows, or we'll talk about abundance tuning. That finished up last week, so we figured we better find something new to keep talking about because this is kind of fun. And so anybody who's joining us this week, and probably for the next, actually right till the end of the year, unless something happens, but between now and the end of the year, we'll be talking about working with the law. This is a book that was written in 1939 by Raymond Hollowell. I was introduced to it quite a while back now by actually Bob Proctor, and I found it fascinating. It's some great information in this book. He's talking about basically 11 of universal laws. One of them being, the law of attraction is one of them, but there's quite a few in here that are pretty interesting. Maybe some laws that people haven't ever heard of. And the thing that I find fascinating too about it is really when he's saying working with the law, he's talking about God. Law is God, or the divine, or source, whatever you want to call it, universe. It doesn't matter what it is you're calling it. But he's referring basically to law as being God. And now I don't want people to get the idea this is somehow a religious book, because it's not. All he's doing is pointing out that we operate with universal laws. And, basically, again, those laws are laws that were created by our Creator. And if you follow those laws, you're going to have a pretty good life. If you don't follow those laws, well, it could come around and kind of bite you in the butt, that kind of thing. It's fascinating too going forward because, we're going to talk about it, but I'm not sure it's in this particular chapter, but it is definitely in the book where he talks about how basically violating the law is sin. And a lot of people believe that when you sin, that God is going to punish you. Well, it's not God that's punishing you, it's the laws, which I guess technically is God. So when you sin, which means you're going against the universal laws, then you're going to somehow be punished or kept stuck somewhere, which could in a lot of cases be punishment, right? So any thoughts before I'm going to just start kind of reading some of this there, Karin, and we discuss it as we go through it, but it's a great read. So we're going to probably read the entire thing. They're not big chapters, but great information. So any thoughts before we start on this? You still there? I think we're having internet problems.
Yeah, there is a lot of information in there. I hope I'm not stuck anymore here with my Wi-Fi connection. I hope I have a good connection and a stable connection. Yeah, but the information in this book, Working with the Law, is so interesting that the people know that they can create anything they want. So if you talk about punishment, it is not. We create everything and we attract everything. And it's good that we...
Whoops. Well, it looks like we've lost Karin. For those who may be just checking in, Karin is in Austria and did go through some pretty serious weather issues. In fact, the storm actually took the roof off her house last week or whatever it was. It's all fixed now, but she also lost the internet for several days, and I think they're still having some issues. But hopefully she will be back. Now, in the meantime, I guess it's kind of up to me to carry on. If there's anybody out there listening in, please say hello and maybe leave your name, because the system doesn't actually tell me your name. But anyways, welcome again. So I'm just going to start reading it, and I'm sure Karin will be back as soon as she can, or you're going to be stuck with just me. So anyways, he starts out, actually, what I wanted to point out too is, he does talk about this being 11 truth principles for successful living. And again, we're talking about universal laws of the universe. So he starts out with a quote from Genesis. It's Genesis 2:4-5. He says, "The Lord God made the earth and the heavens and every plant of the field before it was was in the earth, and every herb of the field before it grew. So he's basically saying that, he created everything, and we in hand are also creating our world. As you're going to find out as we go forward. I do believe Karen is coming back. Not sure if she's there or not, but looks like it. Anyways, I'm sure she'll be back. So he goes on to say here, he starts out with saying the question uppermost in the world of thought today is whether a man, or a woman obviously, has the capacity, equipment, and power to control his life. Whether he can be what he wants to be, or whether he is a drop in the great ocean of life. Millions are affected by unemployment, poverty, and want. So I kind of read that wrong because I'm getting caught up because Karen is back. Hi, Karen. So it says, let me start over again. The question uppermost in the world of thought today is whether a man has the capacity, equipment, and power to control his life. Whether he can be what he wants to be, or whether he is a drop in the great ocean of life. Millions are affected by unemployment, poverty, and want. Now, I'm just going to have to take a quick break here to run off for 1 second. If you hang on a second here, I can hear my car alarm going. I'll be right back. Carry on the car if you can. Feel free to talk.
Okay, so so many people live in poverty, and that's what's meant here in this paragraph is many people live in poverty because they think they are punished or victims of circumstances. And that's simply not true because, yeah, we all life and thinking, and it's all about working with the laws. Hi, Lee.
We're having all kinds of fun this morning, or this afternoon.
Yeah, a good start.
I know, right? Where do you leave off at?
Yeah, the first paragraph. I just said so many people think they are a victim and a victim of the circumstances, but we are not. And the people, they live in poverty, they are not a victim and they are not punished, because here, that's so beautiful. We can understand, and we have to learn that we attract everything.
Absolutely, yeah. Sorry. Yeah, so we're just basically starting the second chapter here. You lost me for a moment there. Sorry. So can they help it? That's where we're starting at, right?
Can they help it?
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, where we have thousands of homes broken on the rocks of matrimony, can such a breach be repaired? Millions complain of sickness, disorder, in countless forms. All this gives rise to the belief that we are victims, as you just said, right? So that's the thing is, if you think about everybody, a lot of the people that you probably even know, I certainly know. I was talking to somebody yesterday that I really wish they would just shut up every once in a while. But they go on and on and on and on all the time about what's wrong. And they always want to look at the past and think, geez, this happened and this happened and this happened. And, and it's very sad because, he goes on to say, just like this, that, such belief makes us fatalists and karmic addicts instead of masters and controllers of our destinies. And it's sad because, I listen to these people and there's really never going to be any good come into their life. Because, again, this goes back to, we're talking about here working with the laws. And as we go forward into this book, we're going to learn that, you want to work with the laws, or like I think we already said in the very beginning here, that going against the law is sin, right? So just in these circumstances alone, where that person is feeling or acting like a victim, it's one thing to be victimized. It's another thing to perpetuate that victim mindset. So doing that, perpetuating that victim mindset is a sin, and nothing good is going to come from it. And that's what we're going to learn as we go far forward into this. So fatalistic belief is contagious. And when man submits to its influence, believing that the circumstances around him are stronger than the power within him, the man is defeated before the race is even run. Now, that line there, the fantastic belief, or the fatalistic, belief is contagious. That was actually part of the conversation I was having with that person the other day. I finally said, I don't want to hear this. And
Yeah.
they looked at me and they think, well, why don't you want to hear it? I said, because number one, it's not doing you any good. And it's not doing me any good having to sit here and listen to it.
Yeah, and I think that's a big problem because so many people talk about the past and what happened, and oh, this is also sad, and they did this to me and they did that to me, but now I'm gonna change everything. And I had a conversation like that also yesterday, and I said, okay, but why do you talk about that? So the people don't understand the law that they hang on to the vibration of the past, so they attract more of it.
More of the same, right?
Yeah,
Cool. Yeah. Maybe we were talking to the same person yesterday.
maybe.
So he goes on to say, in the history of the race and the biography of man. Now, keep in mind, this was written in 1939. So when he says man, I'm sure that if it was written today, it'd be a person or men or women, things like that. So it may be a little political.
I'm sure he meant the human.
Human, there you go.
Human.
So in the history of the race and the biography of man or human, there is a long list of evidence of man overcoming circumstances and meeting his problems of life. Evolution and anthropology alike furnish the truth that man is responsible for what he is. He has the power to control the circumstances, and by using this power, he has created other circumstances more necessary in his upward climb. That's something, we talked about this in Abundance Tuning, the very first chapter on reality.
Yeah.
We are the cause. A lot of people don't want to understand that, and even we talked about that in reality. Was we're always wanting to blame something outside of ourselves, and again, this has got nothing to do with blame. It's got it's not about fault. It's about understanding. If you're constantly focusing on what's wrong and not taking any kind of responsibility for it, well, it's not going to change, right? And that's the thing. That's again what we talked about in Abundance today. So evolution and anthropology alike furnish the truth that man is responsible for what he is. What we're saying, right? So again, he has the power to control his circumstance, and by using this power, he has created other circumstances more necessary in the upward climb. Now, yet some, not sure that we create our circumstances, are rather prone to think that they are caused by heredity, karma, environment, or numerous other external things. Always blaming somebody else, right?
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure you agree. Again, this goes back. You hear this a lot from a lot of the people that we come into contact with. Now, these are the real reasons they think for our failures. They believe in the natural limitations of life. They live in the conviction that as we are, so we must remain. They are sure that what is to be will be. So they're convinced. And again, this has nothing to do with blame or fault. It has more to do with, understanding and awareness. Basically everything in your world is a reflection of how you were conditioned to see the world, right? So hopefully from what we're helping people understand today is that by following the laws in this book that we're talking about, you can change that reality. You can make a difference. So there is no such thing as, again, where they say they're sure that what is to be will be. No, it can be whatever you decide it to be, right?
Yeah.
So he goes on to say here, scientists, on the other hand, searching into the mysteries of human life, reveals to us a wonderful world of power, possibility, and promise. This is what we want to try to instill in the people is you can create whatever you want. And by following these laws and understanding these laws, it'll get easier and easier and easier. Any thoughts you want to add to that?
Yeah, it's just the exercise that stands behind it. To exercise and the willpower and all we talked about in abundance tuning. Yeah. But these are exact the ingredients you need to create your new life. Yeah. So most of the people think there's a power outside. Most of the people don't understand that they have the power inside of them. It's just the art of allowing and open up the awareness The consciousness.
Yep.
That's the key.
Power, possibility, and promise, what he says, right?
Yeah, and promise.
He tells us that the mind is the creative cause of all that transpires in the life of man or human.
Human.
That the personal conditions are the result of a man's actions, that all the actions of man are the direct outcome of his ideas, that we never make a move of any kind until we first form some image or plan in the mind. Right. And this is going to go into, we've talked about a lot about paradigms and conditioned mind and things like that, and how to create the life that you really want. And that's, again, goes back to, he's saying that everything at first is formed in some image or a plan in the mind. Now, these plans or ideas are powerful and potent. They are the causes, good, bad, or indifferent, of the following effects, which in turn correspond to their natures. He tells us that these ideas liberate a tremendous energy. Hence, when we learn to employ our minds constructively, we use correctly these hidden powers, forces, and faculties. This, the scientist tells us, is the key to success in living. And again, we talk about this in a lot of the things that we do, in the coaching that we do and things like that, that it really is everything that's going on in your mind is going to cause what's going on, like whatever's going on inside is going to cause what's going on outside. And he's saying the same thing. He's just saying it slightly different than maybe you or I might say it.
Yeah.
So it goes on again here to say there is a marvelous inner world that exists within man, and the revelation of such a world enables man to attain, and to achieve anything he desires within the bounds and limits of nature. Now, again, when he's talking nature, he is talking about universal laws, right? So he goes on again to say here too that I believe the reason that famous English literary genius William Shakespeare is the leading dramatist of the world. World lies in this realm. The great Greek dramatists that their noted insights always saw the causes in some external fate, or destiny, that brought about the downfall of their character. But Shakespeare saw something within the man as the cause of his failure or success. So obviously Shakespeare was a very, very smart guy, and probably much more ahead of, I'm not sure when he actually wrote most of that stuff. It was a long, long time ago, before I was around. But, good example of something that he wrote was, "The fault, dear Brutus, is not in our stars, but in ourselves, that we are the underlings." Right? So she goes to show too, like how old this must be that he's quoting Shakespeare, which, but what I find fascinating too, and I guess we lost Karin again. Hopefully we'll get that fixed. But anyways, I'll carry on. It's interesting that, a lot of people were introduced to, like the laws of the universe, mostly through the law of attraction from The Secret, which really wasn't that long ago. Hey, welcome back, Karin. I was just mentioning that, a lot of people got introduced to, universal laws or laws of this universe from The Secret. But it just goes to show, like, this was written a long time before The Secret ever came out. And a lot of people talked about it. So, like, The Secret really wasn't a secret. Even, anybody who studied the Bible, and even just the teachings of Jesus, for example, there's a lot of talk of laws, but referred to as God. And the law of vibration and attraction is, again, just another law. And if you violate it, which forms a sin, you're going to get punished. Like, that law of vibration and attraction, you're going to attract to you anything that's in line with the vibration you're in. So if you're focusing on something negative, well, guess what? You're going to attract something negative in your life. And this is the things that, hopefully people will start to really understand. And hopefully, by the time we get to the end of all this, they'll have a really good understanding of it. So again, anybody who's following us, make sure you're here every Tuesday at 3 p.m. Eastern, or 9 p.m. if you're in Austria. Okay, so we see Hamlet. He goes on to say again that, we see Hamlet wrestling with his reluctant and indecisive soul. Macbeth is being pulled and driven by his ambition. Othello is torn and discomfited by his jealousy. Always the characters were battling with their inner selves, as though the dramatist we're saying you are the master of your circumstance. Call forth your power, initiative, and ingenuity, and be the master. Fate is in your hands. Determine it. It's very important to understand that you are the cause of everything going on in your life. If you something in your life you don't like, you need to take a good look at what's going on it inside of you that's causing that on the outside. If every man has the power and privilege to determine his fortune, what is that power? How can we recognize it? And I guess want to point out that it's difficult in the beginning. It's actually quite a simple process to do, but not easy to do, because again, you're not conditioned to see the world anything different than the way you've been programmed to see it. And if you brought up in a certain environment, then you're going to expect your world to look a lot like that environment. Right?
Yeah, I think that's the biggest challenge for everybody, to be conscious about what's going on in your mind. This program, which the people they loved you installed in your subconscious mind, it's simply there, and it's working on this autopilot, and it's just working. You don't have to do anything. And I think that's the biggest step. If you are conscious and be aware, and you hear the voice in your head, and that you recognize what's going on inside the mind, inside the head.
Absolutely.
That's the big challenge, because if you are aware and if you recognize what you are thinking, and I think that's exactly what Bob Proctor meant with 2% of the people think, and 3% think they think, and 95% would rather die than think.
That's sad, but very, very true, isn't it?
Yeah, but that's exactly what's going on. That all the people say, most of the people, and there are really a lot of people out there. They say, okay, that's the situation now. That's the circumstance. So I can't change anything. I can't do anything. Yes, you can.
Yes, you can.
And yeah.
So he goes on to say here, if all conditions are the result of our actions, and all actions are the outcome of the fruit of our ideas, then our ideas must determine the conditions in our daily lives. Basically what we're saying. An idea is a thought or a group of thoughts. We often refer to that as paradigms, right? It's the ideas or thoughts or a multitude of thoughts is a paradigm. So an idea is an image or a picture in the mind. There must have been an idea, a mental picture back of every well-known achievement and invention. From the beginning, this is the creative plan. We read in the first book of the Bible that the great architect, God, saw a finished pattern or idea before it grew. There was a mental picture established within the mind of the creator before it became a reality without in some form of a creature. Now it goes on to say here, the Lord God made the earth and the heavens and every plant of the field before it was in the earth, and every herb on the field before it grew. So, this is the same thing when you start getting into the law of vibration and attraction. You build that picture, you get emotionally involved with that picture. So he's talking about God creating basically the heavens and the earth. Well, in God's mind, he saw it already complete.
Yeah.
And again, we are created in God's image, and therefore on this physical planet where we live, it's the same thing. We can create anything by seeing it in our mind first. And we'll get into it probably later on a little bit, but you don't have to know how to do all that. All you need to have to do is be able to picture it and have a belief and understanding of these laws that are given to us and we're governed by, that it will all come true into your life as long as you have faith in your heart, that vibration, that energy.
Yeah, that's so true. And it's so wonderful if you experience the power that's within a visualization. If you see a picture and then on one day you wake up and then you can tell yourself, what the hell happened here? It's here, it's done, here it is. Yeah. and everything we create is a picture in the mind. And this is so wonderful. The people should know what power this picture in the mind has and how much it affects their life as a whole.
It's a major factor in our lives, isn't it?
Absolutely.
So he says here, every architect and builder follows the same plan, whether he is building or planning a house, a bridge, an institution, or his own life. Every man is his own designer and builder. Like the creator, he makes his creations within before they materialize on the outside. Now, all fears of sickness, poverty, old age are impressions, ideas, and mental pictures long before they become painful realities. That goes into, I was having this conversation again, even with that person I was talking about yesterday. Ailments and sicknesses, there's lots of reasons for them, but having a happy, healthy mind is going to cause, if you have an ailment, for it to improve quicker. Or it may actually keep you from getting the ailment in the first place. You're going to find most people that they're in the hospital have, not only are they suffering from something, but they're probably suffering from something they've been holding on to their entire life. Now, that doesn't, again, it's got nothing to do with fault or blame. It has to do with understanding. And the more you understand this, the more you can change that. So that's exactly what he's saying here is, all fears of sickness, poverty, and old age are impressions, ideas, and mental pictures long before they become painful realities.
Yeah.
Every idea and mental picture must produce after its own kind, whether the picture is good or bad. The law determines it's so. The law does not question, give to it. It only knows that it must take what is offered or planted and then proceed to materialize it into a visible form. Right? So be careful what you're thinking about.
Yeah.
Well, this is the thing too, is, I hear people, and I think he talks about it here too, is, if it's God's will. No, you are given free will. God's will is whatever you are asking for, good or bad.
Yeah. And that's the big difference. Yeah. We ask, and the universe is giving us whatever we ask for.
The problem is we're usually asking for what we don't want.
Mm-hmm.
You get somebody who gets down on their knees and say, "Oh, dear Lord, help me pay my bills."
Mm-hmm.
Well, the universe, God, source, divine, again, doesn't matter to me what you call it, is responding to the vibration you're in, not the words you say. So,
Yeah.
Dear Lord, help me pay my bills. Your vibration is I have no money. I'm stressed. I'm living in fear. I'm worried I'm going to get evicted from my home. I can't pay my bills. Well, guess what? You're going to keep continuing to have problems. And you think about it, like you can look at people that, grew up in an environment where, the family struggled financially. Well, there's a really good chance when that person grows up and has their own family, they're going to struggle financially. Why? Because that's what they're conditioned to believe to be true. But you can change it, right? And again, it goes from the understanding and the awareness of what's happening out there. It says every idea and mental picture must produce after its own kind, whether that picture is good or bad, right? Exactly. The law does not question or challenge the kind of picture that we give to it. It only knows that it must take what is offered or planted and proceed to materialize into your visible form. We're doing it all the time. That's the thing. I hope people start to grasp that is it's working 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. It doesn't take a break. Whatever vibration you're in, you're attracting. So, I always try to get people to, it's having a negative thought, just turn it around. Say the opposite. Start telling yourself the exact opposite. It's a wonderful day. Everything is great. Everything that you want is here. It's already here. And guess what? It'll start to show up. So it says some men can visualize great engineering achievements if they do not know that by the same method, they can overcome their diseases. Again, I was just talking about illnesses, people in hospitals, right? You see it. You see people that, get into some kind of an accident or have some serious health issues. And people say, oh, they're not going to make it, or they're going to be this, or they're going to be crippled, or they're going to be something. But then they don't, because they have the right attitude. They start to think, you know what? I'm going to learn what caused this in the first place, and I'm going to overcome it. And I'm going to go on and I'm going to live a happy, healthy life. You see people that were told that they never walk again who end up walking. Why? Because they see themselves walking, right? I remember a story, I can't think of the names now, but I can't even remember where it came from. But I remember it was a golfer who had a serious accident and was told that he would never play golf again. But he didn't want to buy into that. He didn't want to believe that. So what he did was he had family members put his golf clubs up on the hospital ceiling so he could sit and look at his golf clubs, and he visualized all the time playing golf. And he did. He not only was he wasn't perfect. His health, he a lot of damage from the accident he was in, but he managed to get up and he went and played golf again when they told him he probably couldn't ever walk. So not only was he walking, but he was playing golf. Probably not as good as he did when he was really playing golf, but he still, through his mind, got himself out of that bed and onto that golf course. So we can all do that. That's not something that's special to any one person. It's something we can all do, right? So, when he says here, to overcome their diseases and despairs and enjoy the health and happiness they long for. Mechanical engineering is the same as mental engineering. They are both dependent wholly upon a creative intelligence. Mental photography, like mechanical photography, produces exactly what it sees. A picture of a homely, unsightly person never turns out to look like a beauty pageant winner, nor does the little, short person look tall and large on a photograph. A picture of black will not be white, neither can negative, destroying ideas produce constructive and positive results. If the ideas are negative, they will in turn create negative results. Now, there's a whole story in here talking about a woman and a house and stuff. I'm just going to skip that part of it and carry on down a little farther on the next page. And he says, as we assimilate in mind these ideas of mental pictures, we knowingly or unknowingly exercise a power to produce them. This creative process continues working night and day until the idea is completed. We cannot picture thoughts of poverty, failure, disease, and doubt and expect in return to enjoy wealth, success, health, and courage. It just can't be done. Any more than the photographer can take a beautiful picture of a homely creature.
That's simply not possible. That it doesn't work. That you have this poverty consciousness and you want to create abundance and success and wealth and health and everything you want. It's simply not possible. Yeah. Many people say when they see rich people or a sick person sees a healthy people, or especially when somebody comes gets a lot of money. If someone has a bunch of money and they say, okay, he has luck, he's a lucky guy. Right. No, he is not, because those people, they always think, and I think that's a big false belief, that God or universe is sitting above us and the universe says, okay, you can be rich, you not. And that's not true. Yep. We all have the possibility for everything.
I always like that statement. It's from the Upanishads, one of the very first books, where it says, from abundance, he took abundance, and yet abundance remained. Like, there is no shortage of anything.
Yeah.
If you're lacking, it's because you're thinking. Right?
Yeah.
So it says here, too, the creative principle is summarized in a sentence found in Proverbs. It reads, as a man thinketh in his heart, so is he. And I find this kind of stuff fascinating, is, again, like, from a religious point of view, you're going to read a lot of what's in the Bible or what Jesus might have said and see it more from a religious side of things. But the reality is, if you take the religion out of it and just study it and think for yourself, all the answers are already there. Yeah. And they always have been, right? We're talking like Jesus, that's 2,000 years ago, right? And, again, like, even, we're talking about most people in today's world got a lot of their thinking from, The Secret, the movie The Secret, Rhonda Byrne. Great movie, really brought a lot of things to light for people. But think about this: as a man thinketh in his heart, so is he. This is a Proverbs. We're talking
Mhm.
thousands of years ago that this was written. Right? That's the secret right there.
Yeah,
As a man thinketh in his heart,
exactly.
so is he. Right.
Yeah.
So it goes on to say, well, you may have read or heard that statement before, as it's been taught and expounded by philosophers of every age. You may have tried to prove the statement by reading from your memory all negative thoughts, but because it took a determined and persistent effort, you wearied. Then you drop back into the current of old uh, conditions and ideas, and if anything, became worse off than before. Now that goes back into what we're talking about when it comes to paradigms and conditioning. Right? He's basically saying exactly that, right? Like,
Exactly. Yeah, that's exactly the everything we know and we heard about the paradigms. This falling back in the old self and falling back in the old programmings. It's always the same. If you want to be a different person, you have to be the different person. You have to live like the new person want to live, and you have to see the world like you want to see it. But if you always do the same things, you can't expect a different outcome.
that's right. Yeah.
Yeah.
I just noticed in the chat somebody wrote "As a Man Thinketh." Sorry, it doesn't have the names on here for me. It's a system we're using, doesn't show the names. So, but anyways, yeah, "As a Man Thinketh," exactly. And James Allen put together a great book, very tiny little book, "As a Man Thinketh." I was actually, now that I'm thinking about it too, that might be something that we could do another broadcast on. Oh, hey, Richard, how are you? It's Richard.
Hi, Richard.
So yeah, so "As a Man Thinketh," exactly. And let's see, others hearing the statement were not impressed, for they could not accept the assertion that all inharmonies of life are a result of their own beliefs or their past thinking crystallized into beliefs. And again, that's what we're talking about. This is absolutely the truth. And anything that you and I actually been coaching people on, and even abundance tuning, is talks all
Yeah.
about this. Right?
Yeah.
They prefer, these same people, they prefer to blame this upon something or someone else. Happens all the time. Even God is given a share of the blame. Like, think how many people get on their knees and say, "Oh, why have you forsaken me?" He hasn't, or it hasn't.
Hmm.
You've forsaken yourself, is what it is. Right?
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
a beautiful
Exactly.
lesson to understand that, anything and everything you could ever imagine is already here. But you got to get out of the way. Your old stuff, your old self has to get out of the way to allow it in. And that's the problem. And rather than understanding what we're talking about here and really working on that, no, let's blame someone else. Let's blame God. Oh God, why have you forsaken me? Or blame the next door neighbor, or blame this person, or blame that person. When the reality is you somehow caused it.
Oh, but it's much more easier to blame somebody else,
Yes.
because working on myself and on my inner being and my inner world, it takes effort sometimes.
Yep.
The process is simple, but it's not easy.
He goes on to say here that there are others who believe that in God's good time, meaning that when God gets around to it, or when God decides to give you whatever you want, right? In God's good time, all things will eventually work out to their satisfaction. But that's not true, right?
Hmm.
It's not going to happen that way. It's going to happen based on how open you are to receiving it. It's already there. That's the thing to try to understand. These people are planning for a heaven to be gained at some future time, when it's actually a condition, a state of mind that can be had now as well as hereafter. In fact, unless it is gained here and now, it can never be had in the future. He goes on to say here, at some time in a man's life, he is forced to reckon with this creative law. There is no alternative. So, again, I think what we're trying to emphasize here is everything in your life, you are responsible. If you don't like something in your life, you're the only one that's going to change it. Now, I believe that we have this almost like a beacon inside of us that wants us to move towards the good, because it's better there. We're happier there. So I think that's something that when we were created, that there's a little beacon inside that we're supposed to go that way, but you don't have to. You were given free will and you can go any direction you want. And if you decide to violate the laws and hence create a sin,
Mhm.
there's no guarantee you're going to like where you end up. Right? And that's the beautiful thing about it. Like there is no good, bad, anything. It's just is. And I think that's something that people need to really try to understand. Can you want to add to that or something?
No, this is a free will, so everybody can take the direction. It's like if you take a GPS, you can give the GPS whatever address you want to give it.
That's right.
You can go wherever you want. It's the choice of every single person. But we know it that we have this little voice inside of us, and this is the inner being. This is the intuition that shows us the way and the direction. And actually, we know where it is, and we know what direction we have to go. But this is the programming and all the past experiences. They keep us away from all the good stuff.
Right.
So it's meant to be good for us. This old programming wants to keep us safe, and of course, if we go in a new direction, everything is new.
Yeah.
We don't know if it's really that perfect like we want it to have. Yes, we know. We know that it's perfect, but the unknown is a state where the old programming and the false self tells us, come on, stay here, don't go there. You don't know what happens over there. You don't know. Here you are safe. Stay where you are. This is a safe place. And the old self just wants to protect us.
Mhm. He goes on to say here, they use God as their scapegoat and excuse when their prayers are unanswered or when they are unable to explain some act of God or of nature. It says God's will be done is one of the most overworked and least understood statements in our day. And that's exactly what we're talking about. If it's God's will or God's will be done.
Yeah.
No, it's your will.
Yeah.
God's will is for you to have anything and everything you can ever imagine. Problem is we're imagining things and wondering why it shows up. Right? Everybody goes through it. Like, it doesn't matter how much you understand this or that. You're going to have days where you're going to end up with something you don't want. Why? Because you've been thinking about it, maybe subconsciously. Think of, a lot of this stuff, especially depending on how old you are, a lot of this stuff gets embedded in you at a very, very young age.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
we don't, we talked about it actually even in the Think and Grow Rich about how, most people don't really reach their stride until their 40s, maybe 50s. It's when they really start to have the success and the happiness in their life. But even then, it's only when they understand what's actually happening, where they understand these laws, for example. You don't have to actually know all the laws. You don't need to know the names of them. You just need to know it exists, and you're going to get whatever you are thinking about. It's going to come in your life. So, when we're talking about people when they reach their stride in life in their 40s and 50s, it's because they're finally at a point where they're mature enough and they're focusing on the life that they want, not on all the toys and all the wonderful things they wanted when they were in their 20s and 30s. Like, I can remember being in my 20s and the only thing mattered was what kind of car I was going to drive. I had to have the nicest car, and it was, and the interesting thing, when I look back then, the nicest car for me would have been something sporty and made in America. Now, I kind of like sporty, but I just prefer it was European in some way. And I happen to be more attracted to German vehicles because it did strike me as that they're better quality than the other vehicles. But that changes, right? And you know what? I think the very first time I got a BMW, I was probably in my 40s. Interesting, right? Again, all this I just find it fascinating because it's all the truth.
It's fascinating, yeah, because the knowing and the understanding are two different levels.
That's right. Yep.
Level of consciousness. Yeah. if you can know so much, and that's what I know for myself. I can talk about my experience. I know, and I knew very much in the last year, but it took some time to really understand it, and that's the point when I had a big shift in my life.
Well, you're still only in your 30s, so you still got time.
So I have a little bit time, yeah.
I'm going to start skipping. I got a bunch of stuff highlighted here, so I'm just going to go over the highlights because we're going to run out of time. Can't just, I can't read the entire thing here, so I'm just going to go to that, and I'm just going to pick out on some of the highlights. So as explained, all things and events, all experiences and conditions of life are results. All results, however, will vary in quality and quantity in accordance with the degree of knowledge possessed and in the measure of the mind's activities. Again, that's like very much of what we've been talking about is, everything is going to be based on how you are seeing it in your mind, right?
Yeah.
Next part here, the great self-evident fact, which cannot be too often repeated, is that when we change our thinking for the better, we automatically change our lives for the better. Again, that's kind of what you and I try to help people with is people get involved in coaching with us, or even maybe join the Elevate Network, that kind of thing. This is what we're helping people understand is by helping them change their thinking. We can get them to change the life that they want. And we both do the same thing. People, they come to us, and usually the very first question is, what do you want? Right? And a lot of times people have no idea because they've never been able to believe that they can have what they want. So
yeah,
part of the
yeah,
mental,
I think that's,
go ahead.
I think that's because the environment is a big crowd around all the people. How many people do you know they really think after this what we are talking about? A few. There are a few people they think like we think, and yeah, I know it's getting more and more. But if you take one person, and this one person has a crowd around him or her, and this one person is here and thinks, oh my God, I'm alone. Yeah, maybe it's safer to go with the crowd. Should I talk against them? And I think that's a big challenge too for most of the people to allow themselves to think different. And that's a belief, a false belief too. I can think whatever I want to think.
Yeah.
I don't have to think everything around me thinks. I can see the things how I want to see it. But sometimes that's a big block for the people.
It can be
to
very
think by their own. Yeah.
When you're talking about groups of people like that, there's that old saying that if you see a mass of people going in one direction and 2 or 3 people going in the other direction, go in the other direction, because those people are thinking and they probably have somewhere they're going. Whereas the people in the masses, you think about you're in a city, like I'm thinking of downtown Toronto at the moment, and it's lunchtime. Like there could be nobody on the street, and then all of a sudden it's packed because everybody is going for lunch, right? And why? Like, why is everybody going for lunch at a certain time? Like, why are they going? And they all end up going to the same places and repeat the same thing. And they might have 2 or 3 different restaurants, but they always go to those 2 or 3 restaurants with their friends, and they talk about the same things. Usually, they're complaining about other coworkers or their bosses. It's crazy. And then you get other people that say, you know what, I'm going to go and do this on my lunch hour. I'm going to do something different that's going to help me get farther in life. Those are the ones you want to follow.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
He goes on here and he says, breadth of thought, wide and tolerant views, wholesome convictions, and expanding conceptions are signs of growth. And he says the small mind, however, need not remain small or undeveloped. It can grow and expand and ultimately become great. Because again, like you're not stuck. We're not stuck with whatever we have. You're only stuck if you think you're stuck and you can't change it. And I can tell you right now, I'm sure you say the exact same thing, is you can get out of being stuck. It just takes a little work. And like we already said that, this is what we do. We help people become unstuck.
Yeah.
It's an exciting career that we've chosen. And of course, if anybody wants to talk to us about that, well, reach out. We can do that. What else we got here? So yeah, Jesus tells us that the universal mind has definite intentions. He says, "Fear not, little flock. It is your Father's good pleasure to give you the kingdom." This is Jesus telling you God wants to give you the entire kingdom.
Yeah.
But why don't we take it? Because we're conditioned not to. And not by God, by the environment we grew up in. Somebody has a bad.
It's also the conditioning: we are not enough. We don't deserve.
Sure.
We are not worthy.
Yep. There goes. I'm just picking up some highlights here. It says, whatever works for the universal good will work for the individual good, for the individual's health and happiness on this same principle, the principle that which bless the whole will bless all its parts. Right? So anybody who's very, very successful is just somebody who has followed the laws.
Yeah.
Now, you're going to get people that are very successful who didn't follow the laws. But you know what? They're not going to have a lovely life as they go forward. Something terrible is going to happen to those people. You can't go out and treat people badly and expect to have a wonderful life. You won't. You find these are the people that have terrible home lives. They end up, you find some of them end up in prison, things like that, right? So it's going, let's see, when our intentions becomes reconciled or cooperative with the universal intention, then we become an expression of all that good. This is working with the law. When you do that, where it floods our mentality with illumination and understanding. Again, that goes back to what we were saying before too about our job is the what, the universe's job is the how. But you have to be open to receiving the how.
Yeah, we have to know what and why.
That's like, I'm a big fan of the idea of vision boards. But I think what happened a lot of times when people just watch The Secret and don't study anything further, they build all those vision boards and they visualize the things they want, but then they don't act on it. And the reason they're not acting on it is because they don't actually believe it. When the reality is anything that's on your vision board already exists, but you have to move, you have to act, you have to leave the house and go move towards it. You don't have to know how to get it completely, but you have to take some kind of an action. And the universe, God, whatever you want to call it, is going to show you the path. But you have to be open to receiving it. You have to have faith. And it's, again, fascinating that, what I really do like about this book is that he uses the Bible and Jesus's words to explain all of this, but yet it's not religious. That's the beautiful thing about it. Goes on, as referring to the master and appreciating all the good work and miracles he accomplished. We're talking about somebody in particular. He never took personal credit for his results. He knew the law, and by working with it, was able to perform miracles to the amazement of all the unenlightened public. He said, "It is not me, but the Father, law, in me that doeth. That's it. You have to learn how to speak Old English, right? It's not me, but the Father, law, which is law, in me that doeth the work." And that's the truth. That's the thing you have to start to understand is it's not you. What you're doing is you're deciding what you want. But it is the law that's doing the work. And you, with your faith, is causing you to follow the law. It's causing you to act. And that's something to understand too is, your actions cause a reaction. And that reaction is going to be based on what vibration ring, what you believe is to be the truth.
And that's the simple process. What you're putting out, you're getting back, and that's it. Yeah. but you have to believe it, and you have to have a will, the willpower,
Yeah,
and you need the consistency.
exactly. And that's the problem. Most people don't do it. Right?
Yeah,
As soon as they get a little uncomfortable, they say, this wasn't for me. And they go back to living in that place that we refer to as being stuck.
yeah,
And it's comfortable back there.
yeah,
You're not happy. So you're happy being unhappy.
yeah,
And the reality is that if you start to take action, and guess what? It gets easier. And we talk about the resistance wall. That's about going through that wall. You're going to get
mm,
uncomfortable. But if you go through the wall, you come out on the other side going, well, there was nothing to be worried about at all. There was nothing to fear. It was all internal. But if you start going through the wall, you keep deliberately making yourself uncomfortable and going to the other side of that uncomfortableness, you're going to find that life gets pretty good. Like you're going to see, like, all these incredibly successful people out there that, they just keep going and going and going. What they're going to do next? Like I was watching earlier today, Elon Musk it just introduced his new robots. Like, they were showing a robot that he created, and like it's actually pretty interesting. But he's
yeah,
got it in his mind that every household in the world is going to have these things in their house. Well, guess
yeah.
what? He's right, because he can see it. Now, and if you
Mhm.
look at somebody like Elon Musk, he's living proof that the law works. Right? Like, right now they had a hurricane hit Florida. Pretty devastating. A lot of damage, a lot of people killed. Um, and one of the big problems that they had right off the bat was lack of communication, because the Wi-Fi, all that was gone. It's done. It's, even the power's out, right? And the governor talked to Elon Musk, who owns, I forget what the name of the company is, but they have satellites. He's got something like 300 satellites out in space. Well, they're moving them over top, not all of them, but some of them over top of Florida, and they're putting in like almost like Wi-Fi boxes that connect, like putting them in the streets where they connect to these satellites, so that your average person gets free Wi-Fi in Florida. Well, what a wonderful thing. Well, you
Yeah,
think
it's
about
great.
it, right? You go back and you think about someone like Elon Musk. He sat back and thought, hey, why don't we put satellites up in the sky and make it so that we can get free Wi-Fi to people? That's what's going on in Ukraine and Russia right now. Is if they didn't have those satellites to get their Wi-Fi, they wouldn't be able to communicate.
Yeah,
And it's backfiring for the Russian government, because the Russians are getting the truth, not the propaganda that the Russian government likes to put out, right? So
yeah,
it's making the world a better place. And hence, guess what? Elon Musk is the richest man in the world. Why? He gets it,
hmm,
following the law. So anyways, he goes on to say, all failure in life are due to taking sides with the finite around us. All success in life is due to taking sides with the law within us. Thus, working with the law may be considered the same as taking the law into our minds and live as a silent partner. And that's really the key. So we're at the end of the thing here. I'm just going to read what's left here. That Bob knows. We may realize from this lesson that we have the capacity for, we can think, and in our thinking, create desires and ideas. And then the very last paragraph here, the universal power of mind is endowed within each and every one of us. All that we may ever desire to have and to be is ours for the asking, as we correctly apply the law of life, the law of mind. When a circumstance arises, we are not to come under it, to submit to it in servitude, but we are to surmount it, to overcome and master it by exercising the creative law of thinking, and thus grow in wisdom and power. As for Dr. John Murray so often said, we are according to our systems of ideas.
yeah. That's beautiful.
It's a great book. I think we're off to a good start with this. Again, there's 11 laws. That was mostly just an introduction to working with the law, but there's 11 laws that we're going to carry on with. And next week, it's going to be the law of thinking, which again, I think every chapter in this book is very interesting to start with. So I hope you can join us again. We'll be back here again next Tuesday at 3 p.m. Eastern and 9 p.m. if you're in Austria. And I guess that would be noon in California, and anyways, 3 p.m. Eastern. So it's going to be pretty fun. Some other forward things tomorrow. Tomorrow we have our the Elevate Roundtable that we do at 3 o'clock also p.m. Eastern, but that's a closed group. It's not live, and you do need to register for that. And once you're registered, you'll get sent the Zoom link, and you can join us. It's pretty exciting. There's usually a good dozen of us on there, and keeps growing. So right now it's free, so you might as well come and join us, but you do have to register, and you'll find the link probably on the site somewhere, or you can reach out to Karin or I, and we'll also be able to provide you with where you can register for that. And then Thursday, we're continuing with our mastermind study group on Think and Grow Rich with Eric Keys and Walter Perdigo, and of course the two of us, the team, the dream team, as somebody said. I think that was you, wasn't it? Any further thoughts? Any last thoughts that you want to add there, Karin?
Yeah, it's so great. It's so great to talk about the laws, and I recommend everyone to join us, because if you listen to this information, if you join us on a regular basis, it levels up your vibration, and then you can experience what happens if you raise your vibration, if you come in this different state of being and in the flow. Everything is possible. So I hope to see you next week again.
Absolutely. Yeah, we'll be back. And again, if anybody is interested in learning more about this type of information, you can reach out to Karin at karingatrinig.com, or myself at liamjenkins.com. And also want to encourage you to check out the Elevate Network. It's myelevatenetwork.com. And you'll also find some replays of the abundance tuning that we did, and the Think and Grow Rich. And of course, this is only our first one, but it will get put up on the site, so you can go and check out the replays of all those. So thanks for those who have joined us today. Again, I'd like to call your names up, but this system doesn't tell me your name. So anyways, you know who you are. We'll see you again next week.
See you next week.
Take care.